What if I told you that I knew which team was going to win the Stanley Cup? That I was some sort of a hockey wizard who was capable of seeing into the future, and that I knew which one of these two teams would be victorious? Well, then I'd be full of shit, because I have no clue who's going to win the Stanley Cup Finals. But what if we could use numbers and in-game adjustments in these NHL playoffs to help us make an accurate prediction? These playoffs have been wildly unpredictable, but if this can give us even a bit of insight of what to expect, why not give it a shot, right? The Vegas Golden Knights versus the Florida Panthers. If you're a betting man, this matchup is truly the definition of a coin toss. Both will make you pay for your mistakes, and both don't give up a whole lot in their own end. However, this matchup will be determined by how each team counterpunches on said mistake. Let's start with Vegas. The Knights create chances off the rush, not with multiple passes to advance up the ice, but rather they prefer to hammer a stretch pass to the far blue line. We've seen this from Vegas over these playoffs, but watch how Vegas actually negates Florida's specific aggressive forecheck here with just one stretch pass. If you've watched any of these playoffs, you'll know that Florida has been suffocating teams in their own end with that forecheck. This direct approach works for Vegas because not only do they stretch out Florida and try and negate that aggressiveness, but it works because Florida has a deep forward group that is skilled enough to handle any tricky passes or strike in unstructured situations. Florida will obviously be prepared for this, but it only needs to work a few times to turn the series into Vegas's favor. Now, that seems easy enough, just stretch out the other team and hopefully it goes in the other team's net, but the downside of Vegas's straightforward breakout is that it will play into Florida's favor most of the time. Not that there should be much stock into this, but these teams did split their regular season meetings 1-1. With Florida outshooting Vegas in both matchups, by the way. They did this by taking away the wall and basically daring the Golden Knights to force pucks through bodies and sticks. Florida has done this specifically all playoffs long, but against Vegas, watch how their skaters can't get their eyes up. That failed exit up the wall eventually leads to a Florida slot chance. Against Florida's 1-2-2 forecheck, Vegas will realistically only have 3 options of evading it. Option 1 is to play the puck into the middle, which is always a high risk and high reward, but we saw how this played out against the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs thrived on this stuff in the regular season, but come playoffs, it's a different type of animal. Option number 2 is keep forcing pucks up the wall with the hopes that it'll get out eventually. Florida absolutely loves when teams try to do this. So many teams in these playoffs have thrown it up the wall. Florida pressures. They likely win a 50-50 puck battle, and it's good night, Jim Kite. Option number 3, which is the safest option, is to use the glass and use a lot of high flips. Will it get you out of danger? Sure, but it also makes you surrender possession and have to reset in the neutral zone. You don't give up anything, but you also don't have the chance to generate any offense the other way, and that's something that Vegas's top scorers won't like. In this series, you can expect a mix of all 3, and it certainly won't be as easy as it was against Dallas for the Vegas Golden Knights. Now for the Panthers. I broke down the brilliance of this team in our last video, but the Panthers will take away the walls and try to forecheck the Knights to death. It's how they've crushed their opponents all throughout these playoffs, but in addition to this forecheck, Florida is going to look and try to create delay plays off the rush to get past Vegas's passive 1-4 neutral zone scheme. We saw some shades of this in the Carolina series where Florida used a delay play to catch Carolina over collapsing, and they will likely use that again to create offense off the rush. In their very limited meetings, Florida did exactly that, and they used cutbacks to basically force Vegas's skaters to overcollapse, which eventually led to a high danger scoring chance from the slot. This is the chess match that these two teams will be playing against each other in this 7-game series. It'll come down to who can inflict their system and will more onto the other, but of course, what makes this matchup seem even more like a complete toss-up is the number of X factors on both sides. For Vegas, how could you ignore Jack Eichel? Every advanced stat shows that this guy is absolutely dominating on both ends of the ice. Assists, zone exits, zone entries, slot passes, all that nerdy stuff, you name it, he is dominating in that area. More importantly though, the eye test matches this too. Offensively, his speed can create headaches off the rush, but also he's fully capable of slowing the game down and forcing opponents to play at his pace. Considering Florida has stifled offenses all throughout these playoffs, Jack Eichel's game-breaking ability can be a major factor in this series. On the other side of the puck for Vegas is William Karlsson, who rarely gets enough love but is quickly becoming one of the best shutdown players in the NHL. In the postseason so far, in 5-on-5 situations, Vegas is up 14-5 when he's on the ice, and he's played over 40% of his minutes in each round head-to-head versus the opponent's top line. However, with that being said, on the other side, you have two Conn Smythe favorites in Matthew Tkachuk and Sergei Bobrovsky. Tkachuk is the heart and soul of the Florida Panthers, and he scores game-winning goals like it's nothing. Whereas Sergei Bobrovsky has got coaches literally denying the fact that they got swept.
I look back and everyone's going to say you got swept, and that's not what happened. I watched the game. I'm there. I'm cutting the game. We're in the game. That we didn't lose 4 games. We got beat, but it's, you know.
No matter how many systems or numbers you look at to try and solve Bobrovsky, if he maintains his play and steals games, there's absolutely no chance Florida loses this series. Like any red-hot goalie, Vegas is going to need to make life a living hell in front of Bobrovsky. They did a good job against another great goalie in Oettinger, but this will be a whole other animal. Lastly is the stuff you can't see, the intangible. The mentality and psyche of both of these teams is something you can't quantify, yet it's arguably the most important factor to this series. For Vegas, they have guys that have been there. The original players who took that inaugural expansion team all the way understands the bitterness of defeat and what level of play just won't get it done at this point. Vegas has had to go through their own adversity in some ways throughout these playoffs, but they have yet to trail in a series after laying a massive egg in Game 1 of the playoffs against the Winnipeg Jets of all teams. The Panthers, on the other hand, seem like a team of destiny. I think more importantly, they believe they are a team of destiny. There's been countless quotes from Tkachuk about the belief in this group, and that's true for pretty much every guy in that locker room. For the Panthers, you don't come this far to only come this far. You can tell in their demeanor by how they sacrifice themselves for pucks and how they hunt on the forecheck that this team is possessed by a goal. And by the way, it's not that Vegas doesn't do those things, because you don't get to this point unless you do, but Florida's tenacity has been unmatched in these playoffs, and based on the road of how they got here, I don't see them taking their foot off the gas or being intimidated by Vegas. Really, there's no question that both these teams want this more than anything, but if it comes down to will, which in the playoffs it usually does, I don't know how you can bet against the Florida Panthers. When you put all the X's and O's together and all the numbers and intangibles, the Florida Panthers are the team that I believe will go all the way. There's a lot of things that can happen on the ice that we can't quantify or explain when picking a team to win. I can't foresee any series-altering plays, injuries, adjustments, or any other variables, but from what I've seen, they are my bet to win. Of course, this entire video could be completely wrong, but that's why hockey is the best sport, because just when you think you know how it'll play out, it'll find a way to surprise you time and time again.
Going back out in front of it is Tkachuk. He scores!
So, what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you have the Vegas Golden Knights or the Florida Panthers? I honestly think it's truly a toss-up, but I have to give the upper hand to the Florida Panthers. The odds have them as underdogs heading into this series, so you'll know how they'll play into that narrative. And before I end the video, I want to shout out Jack Hahn and the Hockey Tactics Playbook. This strategy playbook has been one of my main sources for understanding the tactics of all 32 teams around the league this year, and it was essential for me to make this video. Jack is a former AHL assistant coach, and he's a great follow on Twitter, so if you want to check out that book and give him a follow, I'll leave all those links in the description down below. As always, if you want to see more NHL playoff breakdowns, make sure you hit that subscribe button.